Good day on my behalf and greetings from Finland. I will give you an overview on Project BEST, Better Efficiency for Industrial Sewage Treatment. The project has now been running for 3 years, and it's time to tell about the results in your final seminar. My name is Kajsa Rosqvist, and I work in the city of Helsinki as a project manager for Project BEST, and now very happy to take you on a tour in the project. The outline for my presentation is as follows. We will go through the background with describing the problem setup and main regulatory mechanisms. I will show you the project aim, facts and partners, and then end with the main part of the presentation, the outcome of the project. So let's start with the background. Why is industrial wastewater discharged to municipal networks interesting? Municipal wastewater treatment plants were often primarily designed to treat wastewater of domestic origin. Industrial wastewater differs from domestic wastewater in many ways, for instance, due to factors such as high solids content, hazardous and dangerous substances, higher and fluctuating volumes due to, for instance, industrial processes or accidental leaks. These kinds of factors can be very challenging for municipal wastewater treatment plants. They can cause inhibition of the biological treatment step due to, for instance, hazardous substances which are killing the bacteria, and they can cause capacity problems, for instance, when too much water is discharged at once, and they can cause safety problems both for the wastewater treatment plant, its operations, and for the staff working there. Ultimately, such problems can lead to higher discharges of nutrients and harmful substances into the natural environment. So how is discharge of industrial wastewater then regulated? For EU member states, there are 3 main directives in force. We have the Directive on Industrial Emissions, aiming at reducing harmful industrial pollution. It introduces, for instance, environmental permits, environmental inspections, and also ensures access to permit applications, permits, monitoring results, and stuff like that for ordinary people. Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive, again, has requirements to establish a system of prior regulation for discharges of industrial wastewater into collection systems. Among other things, it includes the need to have pre-treatment of the industrial wastewater. If we then look at the aquatic environment, we have the Water Framework Directive and directives on environmental quality standards. These directives give a framework to protect and restore clean water across Europe. They also identify priority substances which are especially hazardous to the water environment. So let's say in practice, if an industry is starting its operation, it needs to know the consistency of its wastewater and then apply for an environmental permit from the environmental authority. The environmental authority needs to discuss with the wastewater treatment plant regarding the conditions for the discharge and include sufficient limit values for the quality and quantity of the discharged wastewater. The industry needs also to stay in contact with the wastewater treatment plant and make a contract on how the cooperation should work. This contract includes information on, for instance, needed pre-treatment. And all these 3 stakeholders should also agree on a monitoring program and future meeting practices. Even if this legal framework seems quite comprehensive, its implementation is far from flawless, and that's why we needed Project BEST. The project aim is to ensure efficient co-treatment of industrial wastewaters in municipal networks by promoting cooperation and best practices between industries, municipal wastewater treatment plants, and environmental authorities in the Baltic Sea region. In order to address this aim, there were 3 main questions that we asked. How are industrial sewage managed in the Baltic Sea region currently? Which are the best practices and solutions? And which guidelines can we give for better management? And by we, I mean the partners, which are 15 in all. And they represent municipalities, water utilities, industrial companies, universities, and expert and waterworks associations from Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Poland, and Russia. In addition, we have 31 associated partners from these countries and also from Sweden and Germany. As said, the project has now been running for almost 3 years, and it's time to close up in the end of September. The budget has been 3.4 million euros, and we have co-funding from the European Union Interreg Baltic Sea Region program and nationally from the Russian Federation and also by partners. The project has also been granted an EU strategy for the Baltic Sea region flagship status from the policy area NU3. So what did we find? To answer the first question, Riga Technical University, together with project partners, compiled an assessment of the current situation concerning industrial wastewater discharge into municipal wastewater systems in the Baltic Sea region. Sandis Deus will give you a presentation on this subject later on, and you will also find the report on the Project Best web page, but I will, however, show you the main content of the assessment. The assessment was made Baltic Sea region-wide by collecting data and making interviews in all parts of countries. It describes the current situation regarding the implementation of EU legislation nationally in the countries bordering the Baltic Sea. It addresses the industrial sectors of specific concern for municipal networks in these countries, and also the differing environmental permit and contract practices in use, if any, and finally the pre-treatment and sludge methods implemented. Based on the issues handled in this work, several bottlenecks were found. For permits and contracts, we can say that there are deficiencies in permit requirements in some countries, for instance, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Environmental permits should include emission limit values for polluting substances, but seem to be lacking in some cases. There are also differences in requirements in permits and contracts. These might have been issued at different times, and thus limit values or monitoring requirements might differ, which is really challenging for the municipal wastewater treatment plant. Contracts and permits might be outdated, for instance, when an industry is using new processes or substances, and these are not updated in the permits and contracts. So-called weak permitting and corresponding contracting again can lead to some additional problems, such as lack of monitoring and insufficient pre-treatment, especially if these are not required in the permits and contracts. There can also be gaps in cooperation and communication, if not agreed upon in the beginning. And this lack of cooperation again can lead to problems considering accidental leaks if there are no existing warning and communication practices established. Above all, there seem also to be problems with political pressure. Industries, of course, bring money locally, but should not be subsidized with allowance of high pollution despite that. In addition, gaps in knowledge and capacity are not making the situation any better. So, can we find solutions to these bottlenecks? In the project, we implemented technical investments and pilots at wastewater treatment plants and in industries, as well as tested differing cooperation models between these locally. We also studied and collected recommendable technical solutions and methods among stakeholders, for instance, in a large number of events organized within the project, both internationally and nationally. In addition, the project also made a training concept to support capacity building within organizations. All of these practices are described in a toolbox, which you can find on the Project Best webpage. I will now shortly only describe the project investments in local cooperation work, as well as show you a glimpse from the toolbox, which was compiled by Gdansk Water Foundation. At 2 cheese factories, the project invested in pre-treatment. EPIM in Estonia built a balancing tank, and Latvia's PNC in Latvia constructed a flocculation flotation unit. At municipal wastewater treatment plants, 3 investments were made. Peltomaa Vesi in Estonia purchased a mobile sampler for monitoring. The Ruhov commune in Poland constructed a new industrial treatment line using calcium silicate filter material, which enables phosphorus recovery. And Leszno in Poland piloted the use of industrial waste and sewage for co-fermentation at the wastewater treatment plant. The investing partners also increased their cooperation among the wastewater treatment plant and its industrial customers by organizing regular meetings, site visits, and also studying each other's processes. As said, in the toolbox, all recommendable and tested practices are collected in easily understandable summary sheets of each practice, which you can see on the right side of the slide. The toolbox is divided in 6 different compartments with examples of practices for automation and monitoring. For instance, examples of samplers or regular monitoring practices, and also in cases of accidental leaks. One compartment considers cooperation and communication practices, for instance, with suggestions for meeting agendas and cooperation platforms. And then the third compartment considers education and training. And for instance, the training concept is included here. Then the 3 last compartments consider phosphorus recovery, pre-treatment practices, and utilization of sludge. And in these boxes, you, among other practices, can find the investments made within the project. The project investments, pilots, and some of the good practices implemented by stakeholders are also described by short videos in the toolbox and on the project webpage. And finally, the third question. Based on the current situation, the bottlenecks, and the collected best practices, which kind of guidelines can we give for better management of industrial wastewaters in the Baltic Sea region? John Nurminen Foundation, together with project partners, compiled 2 documents. We have the guidelines for management of industrial wastewaters and a policy brief, which is called Towards Improved Management of Industrial Wastewaters. Eero Makkonen will give you a presentation later on in this seminar on this subject, and you will also find these documents on the project webpage, but let me give you a 1-page outline on what the documents include. The guidelines are Baltic Sea region-wide with national annexes, including national action points. The guidelines are in English, but the national annexes are also found translated to the corresponding national language. The guidelines give a comprehensive advice for the bottlenecks found in the project. The advice concern legislative and institutional developments, co-treatment and pre-treatment, industrial wastewater contracts, and cooperation and communication. The policy brief, again, is kind of a summary of the guidelines, but gives recommendations from the stakeholder point of view with targeted actions for industrial operators, environmental authorities, wastewater treatment plants, and policymakers. The policy brief is available in all project languages, so you can find it in English, Estonian, Latvian, Russian, Polish, and also Finnish and Swedish. And it's a really nice and compact package of information, so please look it up on the project webpage. And in conclusion, I would like to say a few final words. One of the most alarming discoveries in the project is the insufficient permitting of even large industrial companies in some Baltic Sea region countries. In worst cases, there are no limit values for hazardous substances, which cannot be treated at municipal treatment plants and thus endangers the wastewater treatment operation, but also the natural environment. Here, policymakers and environmental authorities need to take their responsibility and review the legislation and permitting practices. On the positive side is that in other cases, Again, even rather cheap technical solutions or cooperation practices locally may significantly improve the situation. Here again, wastewater treatment plants and industries themselves need to take the responsibility. And indeed, one of the most important things are cooperation also in the project. I would like to say dziękuję, spasiba, äitä, paljon, kiitos to all you lovely partners and best people. It has been a really great journey with you, and it's so sorrowful that I'm not able to join you face to face in your final seminar due to this challenging situation that we are all facing. I hope that you all stay healthy and that we will see each other really soon again. You are really the best. Thank you also to all listeners in the final seminar and to the funding organization, European Regional Development Fund and the Interreg Baltic Sea Region Program. Have a good continuation of your seminar. Now it's time for me to say bye-bye.